Hi everyone, this is Shelley Alford and I am going to be doing a presentation on teaching math with the same purpose as reading. Now to start this off, this is going to be a video that you'll watch and I will be showing you the PowerPoint to go along with it. I will be posting the PowerPoint in Edmodo and I will have an Edmodo group that you'll be able to watch this in. I will send you an email that I have already sent you an email that shows you the link to go into to join the group. You'll watch the video, or I'm going to have it to where you can have the video and the PowerPoint, and if you just want to look through the PowerPoint, you can. I'll have some commentary that goes along with each of the slides. I am not one that would like to sit through a PD that every slide is just simply read to me. As most of you know, you don't enjoy those either, so that's not how this PD is going to run. Now, what we're going to do, Mr. Garvey and I spoke about this, we're going to have this PD carry over into the 2016-2017 school year. Everybody next year is going to watch the same, that joins our staff is going to watch the same PD next year, so we all have the same vocabulary, same thought process when it comes to our math. Now, so to get started, this is called teaching math with the same purpose as reading. And one of the questions we're going to start with is, why do we teach reading? And usually the answer to this is reading is taught in order to learn to take place, for learning to take place in other areas. We teach reading so that learning can continue everywhere else. If we can't read, we can't learn other things. That's what we mostly know. All right, this is usually the answer that I get when I ask that question in other areas. All right, what skills are taught in order for someone to be able to read? Well, most of you can answer this, and if you can't, that's okay, but you should be able to answer this one. All right, these are the skills that are taught. You know, phonemic awareness is taught, phonics is taught, vocabulary, comprehension, fluency, written comprehension. Now, why are these skills taught? If you don't have these skills in combination, your reading skills are not 100%, and we all know that. Once you have all of these skills and all of them are all in one big ball, then you know how to read. All right? We know this. This is something that is not a mystery. It's not brand new. It's not something that somebody goes, oh, that's why we do it. We all know this. Now, what is the reason we teach mathematics? It's usually to get answers, right? Well, let's think about that. If we're teaching math strictly to get answers, then we need to change how we're thinking about mathematics. This is a definite change in the mindset for some. Do we need to get answers? Yes. In math, yes. Is that the only reason we are doing math? No. Because if that's the only reason we're doing math, we need to think about our mindset. We need to think about why we're doing math if answer getting is the only reason we're doing it. Let's take a look at what this could look like. And then I'm going to talk about what are some things we can actually do in the classroom that would change how we're delivering our math instruction. All right, so when we're talking about, and it's going to be difficult for me to have the video running and have all the words showing, so I'm going to be moving me around a little bit. I hope that doesn't disturb anybody. The phonemic awareness piece would be the same in math as the digits versus numbers. So in reading, the ability to understand each word is made up of sounds. We can tell, you know, how many sounds are in a word. We can tell which words rhyme. We can change, you know, one sound and make it a different word. We are very flexible once we have phonemic awareness. Now this speaks to in math, if we equate those two things to digits and numbers. If we don't know the difference and we don't teach our children the difference between digits and numbers, then they don't have the ability to understand that a digit and a number are not the same thing. And without that flexibility, their true number sense changes. A digit is a symbol, and the value of that digit is determined by the place it holds, which gives that place value understanding. A number is representative of the value of something or some things. A value changes when you change the position of the digit. And I know that sounds very complex, and it sounds like something that we wouldn't really want to dive into, but later in this PowerPoint and video, I'm going to show you a direct way to teach this, and it's something that should be taught K-5. I've gone into several classes at the school I'm at this year, at Northwoods here, and done this lesson with kids, but it's something that cannot be a one and done kind of deal. It's a language that has to change. It's a complete thought process that has to really get going as a school language. Okay, so the next one would be phonics, number sense, and place value. Now, we just talked about that here with phonemic awareness being digits and numbers, and I said number sense here. Number sense is all-encompassing. When we get everything going about math, we have number sense, but specifically, phonics is where number sense begins. The ability to know which letters make sounds. We can decode, we can sound out words, we can stretch them out while we read. We can, spell words based on phonics patterns. We can actually know what it is that comes next because we know those patterns that we're seeing. Same thing in math. The ability to know which value is assigned to which digit simply because of the pattern that we're seeing. Being able to manipulate numbers and understand the inverse operations of addition and multiplication. Now, the inverse operations of addition, that should really start being fluid second to third grade. That's something that in first grade, those inverse operations should really start like in first grade. So this is something that once we understand the language that we're using and how we're using those patterns of language and how we're making those patterns equally as important as the phonics we're teaching and reading, number sense and place value is just as important in those developmental years, and we're making that language just as important K-5. I'm hoping this makes sense and I'm not talking too fast. Okay, so vocabulary. Why is vocabulary important in language arts? Vocabulary, vocabulary, vocabulary. We talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. Well, why do we do that? The ability to understand what a word means is so important when we're reading. If you don't know what the word means, you can find clues within the story, right? Well, okay, but when we're talking about math, the ability to understand what a word means, intentional vocabulary instruction must happen in math, and sometimes that's the part we're leaving out. We may be teaching that word, but are we teaching it to the degree that we would if it was a reading standard? We want them to understand all those words in our reading standards, but do we take the math standard and think about it the same way we would as if it were a reading standard? And that's the whole part of what we're thinking about with this particular professional development. The instruction must be part of the math instruction for all students, and this includes attention to terms within the lesson and additional opportunities to develop academic languages. For our ELL students, we need to front load them well ahead of time. For our very low achieving students, if they're low achieving in our reading standards and they're high achieving in math operations, we really need to make sure that we're front loading those low achieving reading students with those vocabulary math words as well, because that may be where a gap comes in. So we need to make sure if we're front loading with vocabulary in reading, we are also front loading with vocabulary in math, just to make sure that's an even field for them. All right, so we teach fluency. We teach fluency in reading for what reason? We teach fluency so that comprehension follows right behind that, right? Well, do we think about fluency in math? Fluency in math does what? It allows our kids to calculate accurately. It allows them to have that ability to not have to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, every time I count to 5, I have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, not having to stop and count on fingers or use manipulatives. Fluency in math is just as important as fluency in reading. The ability to read quickly, accurately, and with expression in reading, and the ability to quickly, accurately, and calculate addition and multiplication of facts in math. Those are two things that absolutely go together when we're talking about fluency. Fluency in math, just as important as fluency in reading. Comprehension. Why is comprehension so important in reading? It's not about word calling anymore. It used to be, long time ago. The ability to understand what happened in a story and why. Comprehension makes us dive deeper. All right, so when we analyze the plot, when we analyze the purpose of the story, we can answer questions before, during, and after the reading, and that tells us that they understood the story, okay? That's one piece of them telling us they understood the story. So the math side of that, the ability to understand what action is being performed and why, this is the piece we're missing as a huge part all the way K-5. The ability to understand what action is being performed and why. I am not making a blanket statement that nobody is teaching this way. So please understand that, number one. I am saying that as a whole, we are having an issue with this being the focus of the math instruction that we're giving. We analyze the action in the problem. Is it a composing or a decomposing problem? Are we using that language on a regular basis, and are we asking for our students to use that language back to us? There is absolutely no reason that our students can't give that language back to us. They absolutely can. What is the question that is being asked, and can you make a statement to answer that question without filling in the answer? So if the question is, how many balls are there in all, can they turn that into, there are balls in all? Or there are 5 red apples and 6 green apples, how many apples in all? There are apples in all. If they can't make that statement, and they should be able to do this starting in kindergarten, making a statement like that, that is a kindergarten skill. And it takes some time to get there, yes. Are they going to walk in at 4 and 5 years old being able to do that? No. But in first grade, they should be able to walk in doing that. By the time they get to first grade, that is absolutely doable. And I'm not saying next year we'll open the doors and they'll be able to do that. I'm saying this is a continuing process that we'll get to. So for comprehension, now if we look at how important comprehension is for reading, comprehension in math is just as important. And what is the ultimate thought process in comprehension? It's the written piece. The ability to answer a question in writing about the story that was just read. Well, if they can't write about math that they've just performed, do they really understand what they're doing? No. Writing a sentence about what the student just did to include details and descriptions in their writing truly tells us, do they know what they just did? Simply saying, write about what you just did, is one of the most powerful tools you can use in the classroom. So how do you make all of this happen? Well, there's another component before we get to that, the speaking and listening skill. We forget about this skill a lot in math. We don't forget about it in the language arts side because it's part of the language arts side. The ability to comprehend and collaborate with others. Okay, we want them talking to each other about stories. We want them talking to each other about discussions and projects and evaluation of things. When we do a PBL, we want them in small groups. The skills in the presentation of knowledge and ideas. What audience are they looking for? Well, in math, the ability to comprehend and collaborate with others, participate in discussion. Are they talking about what the 8 mathematical practices are asking them to do? Are they critiquing the work of others? Are we showing what the students are doing, and are we asking the kids, well, what did he do here? What did she do here? What was the thought processes? What were the skills that were shown here? Why did this happen? How is this true? Are we asking questions like this? And I know I'm running through this because I don't want you to have to take an hour and a half to listen to me talk about these things when you can look at the PowerPoint, okay? These are things to contemplate over the summer, okay? These are contemplation points. Now, one of the things I do want to really dig a little deeper into is the digit factor, all right? And I think I've done this in almost every classroom, all right? And the new people that come on staff, they'll be looking at this, and I will be glad to go in the classrooms and do this again next year. Now, is a digit a number? Okay, what is a digit? Now, a digit is a symbol, all right? A question mark is a symbol. An exclamation point is a symbol. A heart is a symbol. All right, and why are they symbols? Because they represent something. So these represent the 10 digits we use in everyday numbers. Now, they are digits until we assign them a value. They are digits until we assign them a value. In order to assign them a value, hang on, I need to get out of the eraser mode. There we go. Until we assign them a value, they are simply digits. This 2 is worth 2 ones. How do we know that? There's nothing on the left of it and there's nothing on the right of it. This 2 is worth 10. 2 tens. How do we know that? We know that it is worth 20 because of the place it holds. We know that this 2 is worth 200 because of the place it holds. That determines every part of its value. If we simply move it over to the left, then, wait a minute, there we go. If we simply move it over to the left, on the video, okay, it's the opposite way on the video, so I'm not sure which way to point, and I'm not going to point anymore. But when we move the number, when we add enough to the ones place to make it worth enough to shift, then it becomes a different value because its place moved. When we get kids to understand that, it completely changes their thought process on place value. Place value is such an abstract thought process that when we truly get them thinking about the difference between digits and numbers, and we talk about that, what digit is this? What digit is it? Okay, what is its value? Its value is 20. It's the digit too. So if you're going to call it a 2, it's got to be a digit. But the value of this is 20. So it's the number 20. The digit is 2. And we can talk more about that at another time. All right, phonics, number sense, place value. So when we're looking at all of these models that you see here, this model right here, that is number bonding, right here, so many of us don't do this in our classrooms, and it's one of those areas that we really need to start working with from kindergarten on, because number bonding gives that inverse operation thought process that makes everything so much easier for place value to happen. And I will work with you on number bonding next year, and we will work a lot with number bonding. That's going to be one of the possible assignments you can do over the summertime. All right, with vocabulary, definitions. Do you differentiate in the way you teach vocabulary in language arts and math? Well, that's one of the things we need to talk about. If everybody is getting the same vocabulary at the same time for the same reasons, then we need to talk about why we're using vocabulary the way we're using vocabulary, because everybody might need to have different words. I might understand what the word means, but Betty Sue next to me and Jim Bob on the other side, they may need different words than I need. And how do we figure that out? Formative assessments. So we need to think about, are we teaching vocabulary, especially in the math genre? Are we teaching vocabulary the way vocabulary needs to be taught? All right, in fluency, how are we going to get fluency working the way we need it to work? This website that you see right here, this one right here, you all have an email from me. Oops. Sorry. You have an email from me that gives you a link to here, and I will put it on Edmodo as well. But you have a way to get to this website so that you can get to the documents that you need in order to find the fluency games. I have made several of the games that are on the Wikispace. If nothing else, one of the possible assignments you can choose for over the summer is to look in and see which games you want to use in your classroom for next year. And this is the right here is where that link would be once you get to that other page. So you'll have the links in the PowerPoint when I post it to Edmodo, okay? So now, these are some of those comprehension questions that you can be asking during the math lesson. You know, why do you know that is true? Can you explain that a different way? Prove it. Can someone else tell what Matt just said? These questions are questions that should be a regular, ongoing way of language happening in your classroom during math. And math should not be an isolated block. It can happen all day as you're doing other things. There should be a connection to math almost all the time. And we'll talk about that, you know, during the year next year as well. All right, how many times have you asked your students to write a sentence about what they just did in math? This is going to be one of those assignments that I'm contemplating a poll or something like that on Edmodo to see if this is something that most people do or if this is something that very few people do. And if I go that way, then great. If I don't, then we'll start the year next year with something like that. But there's going to be a couple of things that we're going to talk about when it comes to the assignments. And then speaking and listening. Speaking in math is, in my opinion, one of the areas that is very difficult to develop in a classroom. However, it is one area that can change how a class communicates in the math language. It is one of the underdeveloped areas, often because students are not held accountable for the listening piece. And they also do not listen to their peers because it's not them that's being held accountable for what somebody else is saying. So that's something that we can change, and it's a change that can happen in a very short amount of time if we start the year off with it at the very, 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 very beginning of the year. So here's, and then the last slide that I have, you know, do you have any questions? Now, I did this in a workshop, so if you have questions about how effective this can be, Erica Watson took my workshop, so you can email her. I'm throwing her under the bus right now, or you know, ask her how effective this workshop was when she went back and changed some of the things she did in her classroom. It really does work when it gets applied. Now, a couple of the things we're going to talk about right now are the assignments you'll have over the summer. They're not hard. They really, really, really are not hard. All of us, well, most of us, do something over the summer to prepare for the next year. There will be a list of things that you get to choose from. Choose two. Choose two, and post on Edmodo which two assignments you are choosing to do over your summer break. Post that on Edmodo. Make sure you have them when we come back for the work days at the beginning of the school year. That's your assignment. That's it. Easy and simple. If you have questions, you know my email. I will have an email sent out to everybody on the distribution list giving you the code to sign into Edmodo. If you have an issue with signing into Edmodo, definitely send me an email, because I have a Edmodo 101 video that I can send you that I have on here from a workshop I did before. Okay, so I will be glad to send that out. And if you have any other questions, please let me know. Okay? I hope this was not too fast. I know it was a little vague, but we're going to get much deeper into it. I just did not want to make it an hour and a half long. And the research that you're doing for the 2 assignments over the summer is what's going to count for us getting our PD hours in. Okay? So post on Edmodo the 2 assignments that you're choosing, and then that will fulfill what we need to do. All right. Thank you, Northwoods. I appreciate everything that happened this year, and I look forward to working as one of you next year. All right. Bye.